let's talk about those morning routines a little bit. So some of the athletes you're working with and the audience that's listening to this are trying to be the best parents that they can be and helping to kind of instill good routines and good habits in their children. What would a good morning routine kind of look like in your eyes?
I'll give you an example, a real life example about he was a college basketball player that I work with professional athletes as a mental skills trainer. They all play basketball, but competition is competition. I don't know why they all play basketball. It just developed that way. So I'm talking to this guy. He plays at a Big Ten school over on the East Coast in the States. And I'm having my first Zoom conversation with him. And I'm trying to instill this principle that we're talking about. And I said, Paul, did you make your bed this morning? And, he's 21 years old. He gave me the typical answer, well, no. I said, if I were coming over to visit you today, would you make your bed? And he said, well, yes. I said, now, Paul, why would you have a higher standard for someone else than you have for yourself? I said, if you're going to work with me, I want you to start the day with a win. All right. I want you to start stacking wins. I said, our goal is to win the first hour of the morning. If you win the first hour, you can win the morning. If you win the morning, you have a really good chance of winning the day. But if you don't do your best early on, then what you have to understand is the conditioning that's taking place. You condition your mind that that's okay. It's okay to cut a corner. It's okay to do less than my best. And then I'm probably going to excuse why it wasn't important anyway. I didn't have the time. It's not that big of a deal. And so you have to understand that with every decision you make, I said, Paul, from the minute you wake up, you're training your conscience. People don't understand the conditioning. It's about the conditioning. You're training your conscience to either have a high standard for yourself or to excuse a less than great standard for yourself. And I said, so you're going to make your bed in the morning. I said, you're going to send me a picture of it for the next 2 weeks because I want to make sure you're not just doing it to do it, but you're actually doing a good job. He said, what's the big deal about making the bed? Which is a fair question. I said, it's not the made bed that's the big deal. It's the person you become in the process of making it. It's having self-esteem, having more confidence, following a process, getting a win early, developing more discipline, raising your personal standards. And when you can start that early, and then I said, but by the time you walk into the gym to practice, I want you to have 8 or 9 or 10 wins stacked. We're going to talk about hydrating, all right? Because everybody wakes up dehydrated. There's a chapter in the book about how dehydration affects us, and it affects us in a lot of severe ways. And we all wake up dehydrated because all that moisture that goes out while we're sleeping through breath and nothing coming in. And so that's another easy win, getting that hydration down early. We're going to talk about the grooming routine, not just skimping through the process just to perfume last night's funk so you're acceptable today in some way, but to do it in a way that you feel good about yourself. And then we're going to talk about doing something that you read in the morning or listen to that gets your mindset right. We're going to talk about 10 minutes to get your mindset right, because a mind is like a body. It can't fend for itself. It needs to be developed. You can't just let it be subject to all the negativity and all the news and the nonsense, and it's going to get hijacked. And you're going to be just like the stuff you're listening to. So we're going to review your goals. We're going to review your why. We're going to come up with some affirmations. And I said, we're going to look at, not leaving dishes in the sink. Okay, because you're in a hurry, because that's not your best. And once you can start looking for little ways to get that win, all of a sudden now you've created momentum. Momentum is earned, Ryan. It's earned. You don't just wait for something to happen to create momentum. I mean, you can, but it might be a long wait. It's not a great strategy. And so if you look up the definition of momentum, it's called a driving force gained by following a process or a course of events. And so I want to be that driving force when I leave the house. And I need to follow a course of events. I need to follow a process, stacking wins, as I call it in the book, that creates that. So when I walk into my office, I've already tried to stack 8 or 9 wins. Even when the morning starts with the fire alarms going off, there's a sign above my office door that says, be the boxer, not the bag. Well, the only way I can be the boxer and not the bag is if I come in and I have set the pace. I'm setting the tone. Otherwise, I'm just reacting like the bag, getting pounded around by life, and then probably making excuses about the success I don't have from the routines I won't develop. So it all begins with how you start. Right? Some people, they dig themselves a hole. The first hour, 2 hours of the day, they're so sloppy. They cut so many corners. They compromise in so many areas. And then they make excuses for why that's okay. And that's what they're training their brain to do. So now here's the problem. Now they walk into a higher stakes arena. Okay, that's a lot higher stakes than making a bed. Okay, they're making that shot, right? They got the pressure on. And they're trying to find that switch that goes to excellence, but they're not about excellence. They're too far away from it. They've dug themselves a hole. And so it's about having excellence be part of everything you do. Is doing the best you can with everything you do, to where when you really need to come through, you're not looking for excellence. It's all you know. It becomes part of your nature. So that's why it's important to start early. People say, well, it's just anal, all these picky little things you talk about doing. I said, you're missing the point. It's about the conditioning. It's about raising your personal standards, expecting more of yourself, training your conscience to expect your best, to now when you're in that higher stakes arena, you're already there. That's already your expectation. You're not looking for that excellence. It's part of your nature. That's why it's important. It's not the made bed. It's the